member of Freestyle Love Supreme.
Yeah.
He has toured in comedy festivals with groups, fusion of hip-hop, storytelling, improv, and musical theater. And of course, we all know him most memorably from the full-length musical In the Heights, which began, and just a little history, because, you know, I think a lot of us just thought, like, you know, like, oh, it just ended up on Broadway. But this doesn't end up there. It actually began life when he was a student at Wesleyan. Tato. All right. University. In Connecticut, and after 4 years of development, it found a home first at Off-Broadway at 37 Arts Theater, and then at Broadway's, and then at Broadway's Richard Rogers Theater. And eventually the show was nominated for 13 Tony Awards, and it took home the award for Best Musical. So everyone, Mr. Lin-Manuel Miranda.
Hi guys. I like to imagine that someone was texting her that while it was happening. So other than here to do the Pampo Queso remix, they've asked me to talk a little bit about the genesis of In the Heights and a little bit about my story. And I'm going to be kind of brief because I know better to get between y'all and an open bar. So, and I know you all have a lot of cards you want to hand out. So I grew up the street, right off Dykeman. We moved there in 1981 when it was very cheap to buy a place up here. And I grew up here, and it was really funny because as a kid, I was lucky enough to get into Hunter in like kindergarten. So I shuttled between here and the Upper East Side. So you learn that you are different, like real young, and that you speak Spanish at home and you speak English at school. And I think a lot of us come out of that generation. You know, my parents were both born in Puerto Rico. They met here. So I got sent summers in Maricao, en las montañas, Vega Alta, Puerto Rico. But then, you know, going to school with kids whose parents were rabbis and they had enough money for the G.I. Joe aircraft carrier, which it's like, that was like, you know, it's like Sky Mall, it's crazy. So I was sort of very aware that I lived in two worlds and straddled two worlds and was two different people. And I didn't know, and I always loved musicals. My parents played Camelot, Nena La Mancha, like they were from that generation and they had those. But I also, you know, I'm the same age, slightly younger than hip hop. So Fat Boys, Beastie Boys, that was never not a part of my life, not a part of, you know, a part of our lives. My bus driver was like a rapper who never made it. So he would teach us Beef by Boogie Down Productions every morning. That was like, it was like the lesson. He'd be like, beef, water or leaf, when will this poisonous product cease? Mind playing tricks on me, Ghetto Boys, and all that stuff. And so that was, you know, a part of, that fell in the paella. And then, you know, the same music that we all grew up to. It was like Aventura, it was, I remember Jerry Rivera's Cara de Niño was like it. That was the beginning and end of everything. And Mark Anthony, when he came out with Nadie Como Ella, and that was it. And I remember, and then I remember like Ruben Blades, and that's when I really started listening to Spanish music as not like the Spanish music my parents listened to, but actually being every bit as compelling as the musicals I listened to and the hip hop I listened to. But I never thought to mix it all together. It just lived in the different worlds where I lived. And it wasn't until I left the neighborhood, I went to college in Connecticut, and I lived in a house called La Casa de Albizu Campos. So it was, you had to write like a little essay about why you wanted to be a Latino community leader to get into the house. And there were 9 of us. And that I met other people like us that you know, spoke Spanish at home and spoke English at school and learned to navigate, you know, what's the Talib Kweli line where he goes, you know, my girl knows how to talk white on the phone when she's talking to her, and knew how to navigate those two worlds, who could make jokes about the G.I. Joe aircraft carrier and about, you know, Mark Anthony looking suspiciously wild-eyed during his HBO concert. Check it out, you know what I'm saying? you want. And what's going on here? So that was when I had written musicals. I'd started writing musicals in high school, and they were always, I loved Rent. Rent came out when I was 16, so they all just sounded like Rent. They were like, I am 16 and I really want to change things. And then it wasn't until I lived in La Casa that I was like, oh, we're allowed to use all of it. We're allowed to use hip hop, and we're allowed to use Latin music. And so I started writing in the Heights my sophomore year. I was 19 years old. And I put it up. It was an 80-minute one-act show. I directed it. I was not in it. Usnavi was only in 2 scenes. He was the bodeguero on the corner, and he would freestyle with his friend Benny. And he was only in 2 scenes in the show. And I put it in una gaveta. You know, it was not for course credit. And but I was lucky enough that, because there's only 12 kids that go to Wesleyan who are Latino at any given time, that I had to go all over campus to find my cast. So everyone from every clique had a friend in the show. The kid in the gospel choir, the kid on the basketball team, you know, because I had to. That was just the only way to cast the show. And so it was a huge hit at Wesleyan, and I remember these 2 kids who were seniors. This one kid is John Mailer. He's Norman Mailer's youngest son. And he said, Lynn, we're going to take this to Broadway. We're going to bring this show to New York. I was like, okay. The cast party's on Home Avenue. You know, like I didn't take it seriously. But he graduated. He started a theater company with his friends. And they got in touch with me my senior year. And they said, if you still want to work on In the Heights, let's do it. And I had kind of been preparing. It had gone away. It was estaba en una gaveta, but I hadn't really ever forgotten about it. I would work at the Manhattan Times every summer. So I was covering Washington Heights and Inwood as a reporter and doing movie reviews and reviewing Hispaniola, rest in peace Hispaniola, and all the little spots around here. And so we started working in 2002. I met our director, Tommy Kail, who had read the script and listened to the CD. And it was really funny because I had never met him, but he was like, all right, Usnavi's great, he should be your narrator. The hip-hop is the most interesting thing in the show, and In the Heights is a great song, but it's 3rd in your order, it should be 1st. It introduces you to the world. Wow. And you know, and this is one of those lessons in, you know, we're all artists here, so you know, sometimes you're incredibly precious about your work. Yeah. And someone tells you, hey, this song should be here, this song should be here. You know, your first instinct is, who are you? But thank God, I hadn't been working on it for 2 years. It had space to cool, and sometimes you're not ready to hear that. You know, sometimes you write something and someone says, oh, this is good, I didn't get this, and you're like, this is my baby, get out of here! You know, you get really defensive. It's your work, it's your baby, and luckily, I was ready to hear that. I was ready to hear that the show could be better than the first draft I wrote. And so I said, those are really good ideas, what else do you have? And we just started talking about how to make it better. And that continued for about 6 years. And we worked in basements, and we did lots of other odd jobs. I taught 7th grade English at my old high school. I worked a bit for CAT. I did after-school programs for CAT. And you do what you can so you can do what you love. And we were lucky enough to find the Rent producers actually came to a reading, and then they helped us sort of continue to work on it. I've thrown out more than 60 songs that didn't make it into the show. Which, if you work in hip-hop, that's like crazy. That's like 7 mixtapes. But it's true. I mean, when you're writing the music has to serve the story. You write one song, it changes 3 things. It's like doing a 14-sided Rubik's Cube. And it's not based on an original story, so, you know, we're finding the characters and the story all at the same time. So, it was a long process, and, you know, luckily, we found the people we needed. We found Kiara Hudes, who is my Puerto Rican counterpart in Philly. She grew up in North Philadelphia, and I grew up in North Manhattan. And as soon as I met her, we were like twins, like we were separated twins. And so she wrote the book. Because then the other funny thing that happened was now I'm in the show. And that was never intentional. That was something that started at readings. because it was easier for me to do that, to play Usnavi, than to teach someone the raps in 2 days. And I was like, let me just do it for now, and it's not all written, and I'll just kind of, you know, we'll get a real actor later. We always said, we'll get a real actor later, and then it just never happened. So that's how that happened. And then when I was doing I was writing book music and lyrics and in it, and I was going crazy, and it wasn't turning out very well because I was doing too much. So we found Kiara in 2004, and she really totally made the show. It used to be a love story set in Washington Heights, and it became a story about Washington Heights. It became about a community changing. And Kiara brought that element to the table. And so, you know, it's been a long process. But here we are, and I never dreamed growing up here that we would be standing in a room full of Latino artists uptown. I mean, we used to have to go to the Bronx or go to Brooklyn or go downtown, and the fact that we're creating up here is very inspiring for me, so I'm very glad to be here. Thank you.
One question. Do you have any upcoming projects or anything in the works that you want to talk about?
Sure. I wrote this, I co-wrote the music to this adaptation of the Bring It On franchise that's open in LA in November. It's like cheerleading and hip hop, and it's crazy. And that's really fun, and hopefully that's gonna tour in the fall. And then Freestyle of Supreme has a show. We got another show at Le Poisson Rouge downtown. And I think that's April 22nd. That's my dad. And he knows the dates. So April 22nd, we got a big freestyle show, and those are really fun. We get words from the audience. We make up a hip hop show on the spot. So if you haven't seen that, please check it out. It's a lot of fun. And we're in talks to do a TV show version of that with Adult Swim. So hopefully that will happen. That's very early talks, but that's sort of where we're at. So yeah.
Dope. So if they want more information about the April 22nd show, what should I ask?
Yeah, well, Freestyle has like a Facebook page. You can go on that. I'm sure it's on that.
Okay.
What about the movie? And the Heights movie?
The movie's gonna happen when it happens. It's in development and Hollywood, and you know we'll see. I don't know that will even happen this year. You know, it's eso es como 12 feet above my pay grade. So it'll happen when it happens. I'm ready, but we'll see what happens.
Okay.
Yeah.
Thank you so much, Lynn.